Morning, everybody, and welcome. Great to see members, non-members, supporters, sponsors, partners, and County Council members here today. While we would be very justified in wishing and waving away 2020 with speed and welcoming 21 with open arms, I would like to begin this morning by reflecting briefly on the year just past. 12 short months ago, little did we realise what a year would bring. A year that brought COVID-19, a global pandemic affecting all our lives. As President of the Chamber, I'm very conscious of all the people who have lost their jobs, businesses, and as a Chamber, one of our key roles is to support those affected. Suffice to say that we are indebted to all the frontline workers and very grateful for the vaccine. Grateful to live on this island, great island, the beautiful town of Cobh. We can rightly take a bow of how Cobh and Harbour Chamber, the Port of Cork, Cork County Council, the Tidy Towns, Cobh Tourism and the people of Cobh all came together this past Christmas to transform our town into a winter wonderland of lights. That spirit and determination to bring a festive feel to our town is the spirit that has and will bring us through these times. As someone who has lived and worked in Cobh for over 25 years, I've come to love and to be deeply passionate about what this island has to offer for all those who live, work and visit here. For me, the key selling point of Cobh is that we are in an island with a road, rail, cross-river ferry and bus transport system connecting us to Cork City in just 25 minutes. Cork Harbour, the second biggest natural harbour in the world, caters for the world's largest cruise ships, and our town welcomes visitors from all around the world, leaving lasting impressions on so many. We look forward to welcoming them back with open arms. The population of Great Island continues to grow and is now heading for 20,000. We have become the hotspot to live in. You may ask why. It is really simple. You can achieve the work-life balance right, and is so accessible to the city. There are exciting times ahead for Cobh, and I do firmly believe we are on the crest of a wave. Cobh is often referred to as the Riviera of Cork Harbour, with its long maritime history and culture. That it certainly is. Cobh and Harbour Chamber is a community within itself. From inception 62 years ago, our core mission has remained to bring members together to benefit each other in the community we serve. We are a voice for the local business owners and industries, constantly lobbying and interacting with our stakeholders to strive for the best in all aspects of work and life in Cobh. Our 2-year plan gives a roadmap to build on the foundations of success with our partnerships with Cork County Council, the Port of Cork, Cobh Tidy Towns, Cobh Tourism, and there are so many opportunities for so many more partners to work with the board and members of our chamber. We continue to work closely with the Port and the Council to maximise leisure and commercial activity in the harbour. Sustainable energy is so important and part of our roadmap. A massive congratulations to our members Blue Energy on their recent amalgamation with Shell. It's an exciting time in the sustainable energy industry, and we look forward to seeing this whole area progressing in Cork Harbour. We will invigorate Cobh's tourist footfall by working closely with local and national support groups, such as Pure Cork, Fall to Ireland, Tourism Ireland, and others. Cobh Chamber continues to lobby and work with the suppliers of broadband to ensure every house and business has necessary connectivity, particularly in these digital dependent times. We have developed lines of communication with ministers regarding infrastructure projects, such as roads, walkways, greenways, etc., in the clear knowledge that our roads infrastructure is bursting at the seams and needs serious upgrading and investment. We aim to enhance the reputation of Cobh and Harbour Chamber as a progressive, proactive and dynamic business organisation, representing the businesses of the Great Island. We have come through the most challenging year in many a lifetime. We have done so by working together for the betterment of our community. There is light at the end of this dark time, and I am confident that working in partnership, we will succeed. These events wouldn't be possible without the support of our sponsors, so a huge thank you to our Business Breakfast Series sponsor, Port of Cork, represented here today by Conor Moulds.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first Cobh and Harbour Chamber Breakfast of 2021. As you know, the Port has a long-established relationship with this chamber, and we are delighted and indeed honoured to have the opportunity to enhance that relationship by sponsoring this series. As you know, Cobh is the epicentre of much of the Port's business. So we are proud to collaborate with the chamber and its members to ensure that we are all united together to make Cobh a stronger town from a business perspective and face the challenges that 2020 has brought us and what certainly an awful lot of 2021 will bring as well. Our own cruise business is currently paused. However, we are determined that we will see a return of cruising as soon as time allows. Cruising will certainly look very different when it does return, and we are busily working on return protocols to ensure when cruise comes back that it does so in a safe and sustainable manner. And when we have those clear ideas and plans, we will share them with the members of the Chamber. Today is actually a landmark day for the Port of Cork, because after over 200 years history in the city, our traditional home, today is our last day and we move into the county. So how fitting it is for me to have this opportunity to introduce the CEO of the county, Tim Lucey, to address us. Thank you.
Thank you, Conor and Joanna. And I'm just, this will take about 30 seconds just to get the PowerPoint present open into slideshow. While I'm doing that, Conor, you're very welcome to the county. We always believed in any event that the port had probably 95% of its operations within the county, but it is a historic day for you, there's no doubt about that. I also noticed that your Chief Executive, Owen McGettigan, is on, so Owen, you're very welcome, having recently taken up the position. This should load in a couple of seconds now, and I'll be with you. While I'm waiting for this to load, look, first of all, a particular thanks to Joanne, there we go, and the Chamber for inviting me to participate in the first Chamber breakfast for 2021. I suppose I welcome the opportunity most certainly because Cork County Council and the Chamber have an exceptionally strong relationship, as indeed we have with a lot of organisations in Cove. In particular, also I want to mention at the outset the incredible work that's done by the Tidy Towns Committee down there in Cove. I want to compliment the Chamber and these initiatives. Breakfast briefings are a great way to keep people informed as to what is going on, whether that's from public life or indeed from private life. And I think at the outset we do need to also consider the fact that anybody participating in a chamber or any community organisation, they work tirelessly for the greater good. Very often they may be criticised, very often they get praised, but ultimately their objective is to grow the region that they're working for. In that regard, look, I want to particularly also acknowledge the work that's done by the 6 elected members of Cork County Council that represent you in that area. That's Councillor Cathal Rasmussen, Councillor Sinead Shepherd, Councillor Sean O'Connor, and Councillor Anthony Barry, Councillor Sheila O'Connor, and Councillor Anne O'Connor, and in particular our staff in the region as well. You know them well. Look, Padraig Lynch, our Municipal District Officer, Gerard O'Hore, and Robert O'Sullivan in the engineering office. The work of Sean O'Callaghan, and I know Julia Vallone is doing a lot of work at the moment as well in terms of the public realm. Seeing that we're not in Cove, I just wanted to show a couple of pictures to let us get a feel for the place and think that we're sitting perhaps in the Commodore Hotel there. In doing so, I'll bring you on to the overview of my brief this morning. First of all, I'll have a number of introductory remarks. I want to put Cove into a context in terms of how it sits within the Cork Harbour economy. And then I'll move on to some of the major issues of a strategic nature that face Cove and how we're planning to deal with those. First of all, before I move on, look, I'm keeping this strategic. I'm not getting into detail in terms of a whole range of little issues in the town. I'm not focusing on Cork County Council as an organisation. I'm not mentioning COVID and how we support communities and worked with you in terms of Project Act, etc. My sole objective here this morning, to be honest, is to leave here and so that you leave here with confidence that Cork County Council has a suite of ongoing interventions in conjunction with a whole range of partners that we work with to unlock the potential of Cove and the wider region. And before I move on, I think I want to reflect back to 2017. Some of you might have been in the Commodore when I addressed the Chamber back in 2017. And at that time, let's think how far we've come and think then maybe for the next 3 years, 21, 24, and come back in 2024 to see where we're at. But at the time in 2017, we were only at that stage preparing the contract documents for the Cove elements of the main drainage scheme down in Cove. Now Cove will be connected to it probably by August of this year. At that time in 2017, the streetscape proposals were only at their infancy. I'll come to those in a moment as to where we're at. The east tip over in Hall Bowland, that if you're in Cove this morning, you'll see We were actually only awaiting approval at that point in time in 2017 to award a contract for those works. So you can see that progress has been made in a whole range of areas, and I think sometimes we just have to be patient and recognise the fact that it does take time to get things done. So I'll move on, and I suppose I want to put Cove into the context of the Cork Harbour economy. For the last 18 months or so, we've been looking at how internally as to how we can raise the profile of the harbour economy. Currently in this country, through the National Development Plan and the National Planning Framework, there's an incredible focus on growing the regional cities, which is a correct focus. And in that, sometimes we looked at it and we said, well, how do we raise this incredible piece of asset that we have down in Cork, being the harbour? And I just want to depict that there as an existing spatial entity. So within the next couple of weeks, or probably certainly by the end of March, we will be probably launching the concept of the Cork Harbour economy. It's an existing spatial entity. It has a population of 72,000 inside there. It has over 30,000 people working there. And it's comparable, in fact, in size to like the Limerick City, Waterford City, and Galway City. In fact, would have a similar population to Limerick City. When we move on and look at the harbour itself, the harbour population has grown by 77% since 1991, when the overall growth of the entirety of Cork was 42%. And indeed, some of the performance indicators, such as labour force participation, third level education, are all above the national average. And we've measured as best we could through economic assessments the harbour output, and the Cork Harbour output per annum is 4.5 billion GDP. Again, just putting the harbour into context, it's linked spatially and economically. And it's interesting when you look at it to try and raise the profile of it. And that's what we want to try and do here this morning as part of this, is to consider the harbour as a specific entity in its own right. You've got three of the largest towns in the southern region inside there. You've got the M28, the N25, research centres, the naval base, the energy hub, the port, Deepwater Harbour. And again, it's also served by an incredible network of rail network, which isn't available in any other region in the country. In terms of the growth of the harbour region, and why, again, I want to focus on the harbour region first of all, but let's look at where Cove sits within that. That map depicts where we want to target growth for the next 20 years up to 2040. So the target for that Cork Harbour economy is to try and grow the population by up to 49%, with another 35,000 persons living inside there. They're inside in those major yellow areas there, to grow the employment by an extra 72%, to grow the housing by an extra 51%. Clearly, there are very significant challenges in terms of the infrastructure that's required for that, and I'll come to some of those in a moment, in particular in relation to Cove. This is a very busy slide, and I won't get into it, but I just put it up for the simple purpose of showing the range of interventions that would be planned by ourselves, and indeed a whole range of players, including the Port of Cork and including the likes of the NTA, TII, etc., to grow the Cork Harbour economy. My apologies, which isn't it? Oh, sorry. I gather that the presentation isn't showing for some reason, which is unfortunate. Sorry, Mary.
Do you want to come back to that, Tim, maybe, and we can move on to the spotlights if you'd like?
Yeah, sorry, the presentation wasn't showing. There is my apologies there on that. Yeah, sure. Are you doing the spotlight?
Yeah, I could actually do the spotlights now and come back to you.
I'll come back to that.
Can I do that?
Yeah, sure, if you would. Thank you.
Okay, lovely, great. Good morning, everybody. So as part of our breakfast meetings, we're going to do 2 spotlights per breakfast meeting. So this morning, I'm really delighted to introduce 2 of our members. Our first spotlight is Kieran Walsh from Great Island Media. So off you go, Kieran.
Good morning, Joanna, and to the members of the Chamber. Thank you for the opportunity to spotlight my business, and thank you to Port of Cork for sponsoring. My name is Kieran Walsh. I'm the owner and proprietor of Great Island Media, which is a social media management agency incorporating Cove News, and recently launched KC 3D Tours. Cove News is a very vibrant and rapidly growing newsfeed for East Cork, and obviously it helps me gain customers and clients and advertisers for Great Island Media. We also do promotional videos, and we were delighted to partner with the Chamber to produce the recent Christmas video. And We also have a very exciting video coming out this afternoon for Cove Ramblers, if you want to keep an eye on their feed. That's being launched at 3 p.m. and a very exciting announcement. KC 3D Tours is a new virtual tour business that we've launched, and essentially it's a very exciting product for both tourism, for properties, and also for retail and other spaces. Brings a tour into the palm of your customer's hand, and we're excited. We'd be delighted if you checked us out on kc3dtours.com to check that product out. Again, thank you to the Chamber, and it was a privilege to address you on this first meeting of 2021, and enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Thank you so much, Kieran. Kieran has a great service, I have to say, so I'd highly recommend him. Our next spotlight speaker is Robert Pasley of WaveTech. So off you go, Robert.
Thanks, Joanna. Starting out from a small office on West Beach over 12 years ago, WaveTech has rapidly evolved to become a leader in the field of economic development globally. We have an ever-growing team of around 50 consultants and technologists spread out across the world. And we provide a unique mix of consultancy services and intelligence software to investment promotion agencies and professional services firms. From the outset, we established and retained key clients such as the Financial Times, the World Bank, PwC, Select USA, and others. More recently, WaveTech has become a leading player, providing a number of key capacity building projects in countries such as Haiti, the Gambia, Liberia, Dominica, and Indonesia, in order to help establish and strengthen their economic development presence and capability. The onset of the pandemic took a real sucker punch to key areas of our business and presented real challenges into the way we actually delivered our projects. Thankfully, our new e-learning platform, WaveTech Institute, which is designed and built here in Cork, was ready to launch and has quickly gained traction across our existing clients and opened many new doors for us. WaveTech has started recruiting again, be it all virtually, and is looking forward to a really challenging yet exciting period ahead. So watch this space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. And so before I go back over to Tim, I'd really like to compliment you, Tim, on your leadership and support in delivering a county council response to COVID-19, which has been outstanding, I have to say. Cork County Council's Real Cork Initiative and Project ACT, which was designed to open up our town for the season 2020, again, was a huge success. So thank you as well, all I really wanted to say. So I'm going to hand you back over now, and hopefully the slides will come back up.
Okay, I think you can see them at this particular point in time. My apologies there earlier. And what I'll do is I'll just flick through the first few ones there again very quickly. What I was trying to do, I suppose, was put Cove into the context of this Cork Harbour economy. And you heard me speaking about it as an entity in its own right. And if you look at the red area there that we've highlighted, that is the entire harbour area that we would see as being an incredible economy in this country. Next to the City Council there is actually greater in scale. And indeed, I was saying earlier that the population within it and the employment levels within it are of an equivalent nature to Limerick City. So we're trying to, as part of the next round of the renewal, the review of the National Development Plan, to raise the profile of that as a spatial and an economic entity in its own right. Moving on, I mentioned the indicators, they're there for you. All of those are above the national average, the key performance indicators, and we've measured the Cork Harbour GDP at 4.5 billion output per annum. I mentioned earlier as well the actual richness of the economy itself within it. 5 major towns, 3 of those being 3 of the 10 largest towns in the southern region are within it. I also mentioned earlier how we plan for its growth over the next period of 20 years, with a population potential increase of 35,000, employment increase of up to 21,000 jobs, and you'll see the percentages there, 49% plus 72%, etc. But there are significant challenges within it, obviously, to try and grow that. The areas within it there, and just picture Cove inside in the middle of it there, right in smack bang in the middle of it. And one of the major challenges that we face in Cove is to grow the residential population in that large green urban or yellow urban expansion area, and I'll come to that in a moment. I think I finished off earlier with this really busy slide. There are 19 boxes around there, but within that box, there's probably 8 to 10 projects within each of those. There's an incredible richness of stuff that is going on behind the scenes by ourselves, by TII, by the port, by National Transport Authority, by a whole range of players. And from my point of view this morning, I indicated at the outset, it's about trying to give you confidence that this entire region is exceptionally well planned. The real issue here is to try and make sure that we can align all of our activities together, can get the funding at the right point in time, and to continuously stick to the plan to try and drive this and get the political support for it as well. Going back to the Cork Harbour economy and to look at the potential that it can bring to both Cove and the other regions, the other towns and areas down there. At the moment, the output is 4.5 billion per annum. We believe that can grow to 12.4 billion per annum. It has that potential up to 2020. And the return on investment through a 1.5 billion investment, so the entirety of the infrastructure to go into that Cork Harbour economy region is about 1.5 billion over the next 20 years. The return on investment to the state is in the order of 769 million just through the investment itself, but thereafter 643 million euro per annum. So what we're trying to do as an organisation is to build the profile of it, to build the case making behind this so that all of us can advocate on behalf of the harbour economy. Last 2 slides in the harbour economy, and this just simply show, I don't think there's any other region in the country outside of perhaps the cities that has the richness of employment bases, the richness of the skill sets. When you look at it as a region in its own right, it is quite incredible. And it's not just within the harbour economy as well, but the links up even down to West Cork and North Cork, the richness of the dairy goals and the Chagas in North Cork and the Carberries and down in West Cork. The harbour economy feeds into all of those. But not only does it do that, when we're speaking about the harbour economy, we've got to also think about the global network that we have right out of Cove, right out of Carrigtwohill, right out of Middleton, and the richness again. Each one of our companies down there have a reach to a whole range of areas around the world, and that into the future, it has significant added value and added potential for the entire region down there. I want to come on to Cove now specifically within the harbour economy, and I want to try and address some of the big ticket items such as the future residential growth, the transportation growth, and I want to finish off by talking a little bit about enhanced place and enhanced community. In terms of Cove, look, at the moment, population according to 2016 census was 12,800 people. The target there is to try and grow that by 2028 to about 16,600. Now that's a big task and a big ask. First of all, when you consider the level of construction that's actually arising at the moment. So organic growth is not just simply going to deliver that. And secondly, the whole area around infrastructure to try and open up the legs of the land, such as the Ballyknoe urban expansion area on the north side of the town. There are good things happening though. As I mentioned earlier, by the end of the year, Cove will be connected to the Cork Lower Harbour main drainage scheme. So there are shoots of positives there that will assist Cove into the future. Some of the major issues faced it, however, is that, and our targets at the moment would be to, how do we design, fund and deliver the infrastructure to deliver on that Cove urban expansion area? How do we get the funding and the designs and all of that to upgrade the R624 and Bell Valley Bridge? How do we develop innovative solutions to reduce the vacancy levels within the town and try and improve the population and jobs ratio? And I'd come to the vacancy level at a later stage in this presentation. How do we improve the connectivity through active travel transport and try and get that link between the waterborne transport, the rail transport and the road transport, and in particular, all of that transportation movement being aimed at reducing climate, or reducing the impact on our climate as well. How do we also move ahead over the next year and a half with funding and upgrading town centre public realm through the Urban Regeneration Development Fund? And again, I'll come to that in a moment. In terms of the overall residential growth, I just put up this image just to show us. I mean, you'll all know it. There's Bell Valley Bridge, and there's part of the urban expansion area to the north side of the town. We will, over the next year, in conjunction with our councillors, and by April of this year, we will be publishing our draft development plan for up to 2028. You'll be taking a very key interest in this, but it will be the first time that we've actually planned for Cove as one authority. Previously, the grey area down the bottom was dealt with by Cove Town Council, and the north part of it was dealt by Cork County Council. We haven't had an opportunity due to legislative reasons to actually renew and look at the town in its entirety for about 10 years now. So this is a real opportunity for us to get the planning and the vision, etc., right for the town. The red piece up above, that's the major urban expansion area. Within that, that can deliver 40% of the overall town growth. So I'm just putting it out there as being showing how critical it is for us to be able to unlock the infrastructure in that. The key to unlocking it is within the CCC owned lands right there, smack bang where the red star is in the middle of it. We own about 40% of the lands overall. And to do that, what we've done is we've come up with schematic drawings at the moment and a concept around to unlock this will require about 14 different interventions. I won't get into those because what we've done is in May of this year, we've put a bid into the National Urban Regeneration Development Fund to try and secure 1.4 million euro for the purpose of two projects. One is to try to do the project planning, the master planning, the infrastructure design framework, the traffic and transport assessments, etc., for the Ballino urban expansion area. And secondly, to do a detailed design study and feasibility for a study on Bell Valley Bridge to see if we can actually improve the capacity of the bridge by removing the pedestrian side off it. It's critical that we get that funding from government, and anybody who's listening in here this morning, if you're lobbying your elected politicians and your ministers, that's what Cove needs, certainly this year, to try and get that successfully through the URDF fund at a national level. Moving on in terms of transportation, and I have two slides in this, strategic transportation. The suburban network is clearly an incredible asset down into Cove, the rail network. The Cork Metropolitan Transportation Strategy, which was launched last year and published last year by the NTA, and of which Cork City Council and Cork County Council are major partners in, it provides for a whole range of interventions over the next 20 years as well into the urban rail. Now, those interventions will only happen clearly if the demand for residential, if the demand is there to feed that rail infrastructure. So again, there's a whole range of interdependencies that have to work to ensure that the rail transportation is improved. But some of the things that are currently being planned at the moment, the true services at Kent Station will be of benefit to Cove. You'll be able to travel straight from Cove right through to Middleton, right to Mallow and on to Dublin without actually having to get off. There is a proposal to put in an additional station at Ballino between Rushbrook and Carrigallow so as to support the future development of the town. And indeed, as well as that, what we've also put in most recently into the National Transport Authority is a bid to seek funding as well to see as to how we can improve the active travel linkage, the sustainable transport linkages between the town and Carrigallow so as to link up with the ferry. Long term, there'll be a second platform needed at Cove Station to cater for the projected increase in train numbers, etc. And ultimately, there's a vision around having three different phases in this. I suppose long term, or medium term, over the next 5 to 10 years, an increased number of commuter train services, 3 per hour between Middleton, Cove and Kent Station. But again, that's subject to demand, subject to usage, subject to the growth of the town. Beyond that, longer term, within the next 20 years, to further increase the number of commuter services up to 6 trains per hour. Now that's a vision, it's provided for in the strategy, it's there and the NTA are driving it. What I'm saying to you here this morning really is to give you confidence that we are heavily involved in that, but ultimately the improvement of the rail service down into Cove is really dependent on how quickly the town can grow as well. In terms of the Fota Road, clearly a big ticket item in terms of Cove's future development and even its current sustainability. There's some very interesting statistics up there in that. First of all, it's 10.5 kilometres in length. But actually, to do so, down the bottom right-hand corner of that slide, it would cost about 95 million euro to actually do the entirety of the work that we would require to have done on the R624. To put that into context, we're currently doing the N22 bypass of Macroom, which is about 220 million euro. So that 10.5 kilometres of length of road is actually about 50% of what we're putting into the N22 bypass. And you can see how long it takes to get an N22 bypass take. So this isn't going to happen in the next 5 years or 10 years, perhaps maybe in 10 years' time. But before we get there, the stats on that at the moment are quite striking. The design capacity about 5,000 traffic movements per day. Currently, it's at 3 times that. And by 2035, it'll be at 4 times that. What we're trying to do here with the R624 is, first of all, in 2018, we made a case to the National Transport Authority and the Department of Transport to try and have it reclassified as a national route. We need that reclassification because the type of funding that will go into it is required to come through really the type of funding that the TII get. In trying to advance that, there certainly is a very significant business case to prove the feasibility, the initial optioneering, doing the cost assessments. And as an organisation, we've committed already to appoint consulting engineers ourselves to drive that on. I would expect by Q3 of this year that we'll have a consulting engineering service in place to do the business case, to look at the feasibility, etc. But so all I'm saying to you really here, I suppose, is that we are committed to trying to do what we can as an organisation, but there's a limit to what we can do without national support for its reclassification in the first instance, I think, as a national route, and then it becoming a significant piece of infrastructure that's required to be delivered by the National Development Plan in the next the review of the National Development Plan. While all of that is going on, I just want to give you an assurance that there is an emergency plan for access into the Great Island. We know that there are challenges there. We know accidents can happen. We know during Storm Ophelia that was blocked for a short period of time. And this morning, I just want to give gratitude to the Port Island Resort and the other Port Island partners for their help in ensuring that we can utilise their properties and their routes through their lands, so that if there is a very significant event that happens on the Fota Road, that we have alternative access in there. And we work very closely with Garda Síochána and the HSE as part of any major emergency that would happen down there. Moving on to community and community placemaking, I have 2 slides coming up, and because I wanted to show you the level of investment through your municipal district that goes into the town of Cove. That slide alone, between 2019 and 2020, there's nearly €400,000 worth of investment gone into communities down there. To just look at 2019 there, 24 organisations, 41,000 in immunity grants, 21 resident associations supported. Cove Teddy Towns get in the order between 20 and 22,500 each year and do an incredible amount of work for it. Capital grants going to Cove Golf Club, Rushbrook Lawn Tennis Club, Cove Sailing, Cove Great Island Community. We support heavily the Cove and Harbour Chamber, and well deserved as well. We support a whole range of different festivals inside the town. So annually, there's at least €200,000 going in to support what I call community placemaking. And we recognise that communities need that, and we recognise the value that comes back to us from that. And our own local councils are key to ensuring that that funding continues for the future. The next slide, I suppose, shows what I would call the type of community investment that may not be seen around the town. But there's over €750,000 of investment there that will happen in 2021. They are small interventions, but they're actually all aimed at improving the space and the placemaking for your communities in Cove. There's €500,000 up there on top in terms of road restoration works at different areas of the town. You know, €45,000 going into small pieces of footpath programs, road drainage, road lining. And as well as that, we're seeking further funding from the NTA for different active travel interventions in the town centre, such as additional widening footpaths, pedestrian crossings at different locations. So those 2 slides alone annually provide about nearly €1 million worth of investment, small interventions to support community placemaking, and will continue. Moving on to property utilisation and vacancy, we undertook an urban capacity study across about 12 towns in the county during 2018. One of those was in Cove. It was essentially to try and identify the vacancy levels, where that vacancy was, and we're now at a stage, well, how can we actually assist in trying to reduce vacancy? And I'll come to in the next slide on that. It's quite stark in Cove. You'll know it on the ground. 21% of the commercial town centre building stock is vacant, whereas a normal, functioning, healthy market would be in the order of 5 to 7%. So there are significant challenges there to try and see how can we unlock some of that vacancy. When we got deeper into the residential side of it, there are a total of 35 vacant units on first floors, 26 on second floors, and 15 on third floors. So the residential units over the commercial centres inside, right smack bang in the town centre, could actually generate an additional 76 residential units within the town. It's not easy to solve that. It's multifaceted, but having the knowledge and having the information is critical in the first instance. How can we deal with it? Consistently, it's an issue that comes up inside in our council chamber, and your members of council would consistently be asking me about how can we assist in trying to deal with vacancy. Clearly, we're not the only player. There's a whole range of issues around regeneration of brownfield sites and the viability of them. There's a whole range of issues around land ownership, property ownership, lease ownership, and all of that. But as of this week, we're taking a step forward, and this week we just established what we're calling our Urban Regeneration and Property Activation Unit, and I've appointed a senior member of staff specifically into our property section, to deal specifically with the whole issue of vacancy and urban regeneration in town centres, and build a team, a multidisciplinary team that over time will try and work with this. How will we do so? we as an organisation certainly need to get a much better understanding of the market demands and the needs. We need to build relationships and stronger relationships with other players in the property market, estate agents, etc. But we also need to reach out to other private companies, to other state agencies, to see whether there's opportunity to work in partnership to try and unlock some of the vacancy and potentially create additional job space, etc. in towns. How will we do so? We're not sure yet. There's only a certain amount that we can do, but certainly what could be on our cards would be possible incentivization of commercial leases, possibly getting in to see where will market rents command a commercial lease or not. If they don't, is there a space for us to become to incentivize that, because there's a wider economic spin-off in terms of our investment place. Will we purchase and develop property ourselves for commercial leasing? How can we use all of the available funding streams that we work with ourselves? We have a range of funding streams that come in through, and particularly through the housing side. There's repair and renewal leases. And a lot of players in the market, a lot of owners of property in the market wouldn't necessarily understand the totality of supports that are out there. Can we use our Part 8 planning system ourselves as a mechanism where we could develop genuine partnerships with the private sector? The key to this, really, I suppose, is a much deeper understanding, and you can be assured that we have a particular focus on it over the next 2 to 3 years to try and come up with a model that we can be used in any town to try and unlock the vacancy and try and work with and reduce that 21% level in Cove Town. Moving on to the last piece, I suppose, in terms of the placemaking, and I know that the Chamber Executive had a very detailed briefing there, I think back in October, from Julia Vallone, our senior architect, who's doing superb work in bringing that scheme forward. I mentioned at the outset that the streetscape concept was at its infancy 3 years ago. No, it's very much there. And we would be proposing to publicly advertise the entire scheme by the end of Q1. We have 1 or 2 more sessions to go through with our local councillors, and once we've gone through that and got their nod to go public with it, then I think you'll see it being publicised probably by the end of March. The overall plan is to try and improve the public realm from the likes of the railway station, Heritage Centre, right over as far as East Beach through 4 to 5 different zones. It will require further URDF funding, the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund. So, but it is positive that already we've got €142,000 to support the initial designs of it. The fact that we're on that particular programme at this point in time should ensure that once we get the planning in place and the approvals in place, that we will be able to get the actual money to put the infrastructure into the ground. It's an incredible opportunity to be grasped by the town. It will raise a whole range of issues around car parking, about space usage, about, how do we get this town to really turn its face to ensure that the pedestrian is the primary person in the town as opposed to the vehicle. So there are challenges there, but I'm sure in working with you all that we'll get it through. There are a number of towns who've already gone through this, the likes of Clonakilty, Kinsale, etc. Bandon is going through it at the moment, where we're out there in public consultation. The one thing I would ask you to do is certainly look at the opportunity, look at the streetscape improvements that can be made, and look at the environment that will arise from this for your people in the town. I'll finish by showing some visuals of these, some artist impressions. Just look at that, probably 1920s or so. Moving on to show you, that's a concept around Kennedy Park. The next one is a concept around one of the squares inside the town. Very fresh, very modern. I appreciate the fact that these are artist impressions, but at the same time, it's just to give you the imagery of what we're trying to achieve. Moving on again back to Kennedy Park. Very fresh, very usable, very open, and a very pleased, not that it isn't at the moment, but certainly the intervention just needs to be modernised. That's another vista of the square and the park together. And that's a vista running from East Beach right back around down to West Beach. So it's a big opportunity. We will be putting out a public display by the end of Q1, and we welcome your support to try and get that through our council as well. There is a 5-month opportunity there to try and get that approved through our council, and I think we will. So my concluding remarks, look, is first of all, at the outset, my apologies for the mess up with the slides earlier. Secondly, again, to thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate that has been high level, but that's the seat that I sit in, I suppose, and there may well be more detailed questions that might come arising from that. Just to say again that we are extremely committed to Cove. I can assure you that the entirety of the state agencies are as well. But what we do need is for you, through the Chamber and through any community group down there, work with our politicians and to keep the pressure on to try and ensure that we get the infrastructure funding to drive forward with its future development. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for a very comprehensive presentation. I'm going to now answer a few questions, ask you the questions there, Tim, and you might answer them. I suppose the hot topic here, as you rightly said, was broadband in Cove and the lack of. So I suppose MBI were employed to provide broadband to Cove, and it was due here for the first quarter of this year, 21, and has now been delayed for the middle of 22. I know you're just the facilitator, you're not the organizer, but would you be able to brief us on that?
Yeah, well, look, I think first of all, really, it's NBI need to give you the full detail of that. Obviously, right? We are a facilitator, and our role in delivering broadband to the town is twofold. One is through a specific option side here, and through our engineering side as well, to be able to facilitate the type of infrastructure interventions that National Broadband Ireland need on the ground, such as putting up poles, such as perhaps road openings, etc. My understanding is that there is slippage on the National Broadband Programme. We don't have a role in that, to be quite frank with you. The only role we have, to be honest, is to try and lobby on behalf of Cove and other regions, lobby National Broadband Ireland. I can assure you that even at our last council meeting, there was a very significant debate among our councillors, your own councillors participating in that inside in the council chamber as well, and seeking answers from NBI as to why there is slippage. I gather overall the country that there is a certain amount of slippage. At the moment, look where it's at, as my understanding is that the Carrigaline deployment area is ongoing and should be completed shortly, and that the Middleton deployment area, of which Cove is a part, follows on thereafter. I appreciate that anybody who is listening and I say, well, he hasn't given us an answer on it. I can't, to be honest with you. It's really NBI that you need to speak to, and it's really NBI that you need to lobby and pressurise into seeing whether or not they can advance that programme at a speedier level for Cove. One thing that we as an organisation, however, are doing, and we're currently working on it, and probably should have it solved by the middle of this year, I would say, but we are actually through an EU programme, EU for Wi-Fi, I think it's called, putting in 3 public Wi-Fi spots into the town, and they will be served by a 1 gig service, which we're running into our own municipal district office, and we'll run public Wi-Fi into Kennedy Park, into an area down around Cove Heritage Centre, and we're currently in discussions with the Port of Cork to see whether we can erect an antenna down there as well, to have public Wi-Fi at the point of departure and landing for the cruise berth. So that should certainly improve the placemaking again of the town by anybody having 1 gig connectivity through public Wi-Fi by the middle of this year, courtesy of Cork County Council.
Okay, and I suppose just for people to know that the Cove and Harbour Chamber have been in touch with MBI on a regular basis, and they will be presenting, I suppose, yeah, the concern is that May 22 is way too late. So they're going to do a presentation with the Chamber at our next members meeting in February to explain their actions and how we as a town can get on their intervention map. So we are working behind the scenes for sure, and we're in constant contact with the CEO of MBI. So just to move on really to the public realm, I suppose, you know, the concept there is for people to be able to come into town and enjoy Cove Town as an experience. Isn't that correct?
It is, yeah. Look, I think you know, Cove is an incredible town, incredible architecture inside there, incredible history. I suppose, you know, for those listening, when you look at the town of Kinsale, when you look at the town of Clonakilty, when you look at even Middleton, and the work that has been done in those areas, it's really about trying to ensure that people feel a lot more comfortable inside in their towns, so that they feel that the actual vehicle hasn't taken over their space, so that they feel, I suppose, comfortable sitting down, comfortable moving, comfortable just moving across the spaces, but also, you know, the level of intervention that will go into Cove in terms of the freshness, etc., should also give a boost to commercial activity, I think, down there. Should also perhaps make people think about, you know, do I need to look at my own property? I think there's a very significant issue in all towns, not just from a public realm point of view, but from a private property ownership point of view, to really look up and see, have a look at your own property as well. And I'd encourage yourselves as a chamber that when we try and work through the process of improving the public realm in the first instance, that perhaps we could all work a little bit more closely as well on the improvement of property within the town. That's not to say that there isn't, that Cove doesn't look exceptionally well, it does, but there are a number of derelict sites inside there as well. I think we have 9 of them on our derelict sites registered at this point in time. And a site doesn't have to be derelict to be on a derelict site or to look derelict. You know, something can look unsightly. So there's a double approach to this. I think one is the public realm that we will put in, but secondly, I think for us all to work a little bit more closely on what we can do jointly, and in particular in vacant properties as well. There's an ownership, there's a responsibility there amongst landowners themselves and property owners themselves to ensure that they're presented in the right way as well, so as to improve the overall ambience of the town.
And I suppose, Tim, there's been obviously a few people have come to me regarding buildings, because obviously these buildings, they're Victorian, they're old, they cost an awful lot of money to renovate. So it would be great to see some kind of a tax incentive scheme for them, or some kind of a grant basis scheme for those landowners to modify their buildings, to do them up. Because obviously money is an issue for people to be able to, okay, they're purchasing, that's the first step, but then doing them up is the second step. So is there anything on the plan there to do?
Well, look, I mentioned earlier that certainly I had the word incentivization inside in one of the slides there. First of all, in relation to the tax side of things, I honestly do think that there's at the moment, right, there's under our own minister, there's a very specific focus on town centres first. So our own minister has a number of working groups just established, cross-agency working groups, cross-departmental working groups at a national level, to look at the range of issues that impact on town centre growth. I honestly think that arising out of that, there needs to be some consideration given to the fiscal piece of that. How do you improve the opportunity and make it attractive, financially attractive for owners of their properties? If you look back to the 1980s, and there was the Seaside Tax Resort Scheme, I think. And there were some towns in the county, in fact, I think Clonakilty probably benefited significantly from it, where people were able to invest in their towns, but actually write some of the investment cost off by way of tax. It's almost a dirty word in this country at this point in time, tax incentivization. There is a place for it. In terms of our own role, certainly there have been a lot of discussions inside in our council chamber around the whole issue of rates and rates alleviation and all of that, but that's only one minor piece of it, to be honest with you. If there's potential probably there, but there are a range of other schemes that we may well be able to bring into play that are funded through our own housing department. Like at the moment, you can get up to €60,000 grant to renew a property if it's leased back to us. If you thought about that in one particular property, people may not be aware of that. So one of the things that we will be doing, certainly as I mentioned this year, we'll be putting a very particular focus on looking at the range of opportunities that we have. We'll be out there in the marketplace. We will be certainly engaging with estate agencies and property owners on the ground. Whether we can bring in incentivization or not, I'm unsure. But we also need property owners to work with us as well.
But there also need, I think sometimes, to hit people, okay, like that's one section that needs to be worked on. But then you have landlords or people who own property who they'll buy the property and they'll sit there to speculate on the market, and that building could be left idle, go into disrepair, make the whole persona of the town not look amazing. That has to affect their pockets as well, the fact that they're being left to do that. So can something be brought in to that effect?
There isn't anything there. Look, there's nothing that we can do about that at this particular point in time. The only thing that is kind of akin to that at the moment is the vacant sites levy, which is a levy that's on residential land that is zoned for residential purposes, and if after a number of years it's not activated for residential purposes and there's a levy placed on it, but even that in itself is extremely difficult to work with. It doesn't exist for vacant property. Perhaps through the town centre's first approach at a national level, all of these things might well come through, and perhaps that type of concept may be introduced.
And the whole idea of, I suppose a lot of people would say to me about the connectivity, because that's what the whole concept even of the public realm is, that you're connecting people to even Cove, connecting to the city connecting to Cove, to Monkstown, to Passage. So to create more walkways and greenways within Cove, even on the outer side of the Photo Road, that could be another greenway connecting up towards Carricktool and Middleton. Do you see that in the plans in the future?
We do. Look, we've put forward a sustainable transport plan to the NTA of about €150 million worth of investment as proposals for cycleways and greenways in the metropolitan area. And one of the projects aside that would be to look at the concept of linking Carricktool to Cove by way of greenway. It's extremely difficult to visualize at this point in time. I suppose if we went back a number of years ago, would you have thought that we'd have had a Middleton to Youghal greenway being built? We now have that being built. Would you have thought that we'd have had a Dunkettle to Carricktool greenway being built? And that will be built in the near future. So certainly it's a proposition that we have there with the National Transport Authority. It would, if we get the funding first, the first stage would be to examine the feasibility of it. How do you do it? You know, what lands do you have available to you? Do you have lands at either side of the railway that potentially could be built on? So you know, there is the one positive thing at this point in time, and I'm feeling it certainly under our new government, there's a very, very significant commitment to greenways and sustainable transport. And in fact, we've only got approval only in the past week to employ an additional 16 to 17 staff for the purpose of the next 5 years of driving on with greenway development, active travel propositions, etc. And that's a very significant commitment from government to ourselves to have the resources in place to start doing this work. So, you know, you won't see it in the next 5 years, but certainly the concept is there.
Okay, so there's two questions here I want to briefly ask you. Tony McKeown has asked, the finance, is it being ring-fenced? You know, can he ask what finance has been ring-fenced for the public realm upgrade to date?
Yeah,
So,
well, I think there's somewhere in the order, off the top of my head, I think we have somewhere in the order of 1 or 1.5 million at the moment in the kitty for it, I think, right? But we will be relying on securing funding through the Urban Regeneration Development Fund. So that fund is a 2 billion fund, which is controlled centrally by government. And about every 6 months, there's a bid process for funding from the URDF. The fact that we've been successful in the first round, so there's category 2s and category 1s. Category 2 is for the purpose of design, feasibility and design, and bringing schemes to construction, to construction start stage. So the fact that we already secured under the category 2 from the URDF 142,500 euro to bring the public realm to design stage is a very positive thing, because once you're on the list of the URDF, effectively you potentially move on to category 1 thereafter. So once we get the planning approval through, the next step will be for us obviously to do detailed design to see if we can get onto category 1 with the URDF and then put it out to tender. It's going to cost more than 1.5 million euro clearly, but I would be positive enough, to be honest with you. I'd be reasonably positive to say that we'd be able to secure the funding from the URDF.
Great. Another question from Trevor Cummins. You did mention, Tim, there to remove the footpath on Bev Valley Bridge in order to upgrade it. Surely the plan would be at least to retain one of them for pedestrian access over the photo bridge to connect to the photo road. Is that correct?
I suppose again, what we want to do is we want to look at what are the options there. There will be no question of not enabling pedestrian access across the bridge, obviously. So it's potentially putting a boardwalk on either side of the bridge is the solution there. But that bridge, as you know, I'm sure it's probably I'm not sure whether it's a protected structure or not, but it's as you know, it's a couple of 100 years old, so it needs to be dealt with very sensitively. The intention would be to give the entirety of the bridge to transport and move your pedestrians off on either side of it. That's the real intention there.
Okay. So, so you're moving the pedestrians on either side. Would you build a separate bridge for the pedestrians or not?
That's couldn't say at this point in time. That's what we want to do. We want if we can get the funding through the URDF, the 350,000 that we believe is required to do the feasibility and to do designs, that will emerge from that.
Okay, so Colin Moorhead had a question. Obviously great to see all the plans specifically looking at the harbour economy. Can you expand a little further about the plans for marine-based transport or Cork County Council tourism sites going to be linked by water such as Spike, Camden, Port, Harbolan Park?
Yeah, well, look, first of all, in relation to Spike and transportation there, look, obviously this year was very difficult, and next year will be very. Last year was very difficult, and this year will be difficult again. Despite that, we've had, I think, about 50,000 visitors, I think, to Spike last year, which is quite incredible, despite the lockdown. And we have a situation in place there where we have significantly enhanced capacity as well for Spike. Long term, to be honest with you, I think there's an opportunity there for accessing Spike from a whole range of different points around the harbour. Certainly, the primary point of departure should be from Cove. It's intrinsically linked to Cove, and we would never see that not being the case. But to grow the opportunity for Spike and potentially for Cove as a result of it, I think there's a whole range of other opportunities around the harbour. Whether the private sector is interested in that or not, we don't know. But I think it's something that we will need to give consideration to post 2021. I would say, obviously, it's not now at this point in time. On the wider issue of waterborne taxis and all of that, I think if we went back to the boom time, there certainly was a level of interest back in the early 2000s or mid 2000s. And I gather at the time as well, there were potentially discussions going on with one company who had an interest in introducing a waterborne taxi running from Cove over the Monkstown Passage, etc., and back and into the city. I'm not aware that there's any particular interest at this point in time, but from our point of view, we certainly would encourage it. We'll work with any opportunity that comes, certainly. Our role in that would be to improve the access points, and we're open to that.
Okay, good. It would actually connect, I suppose it would connect the whole harbour together from even just the connectivity point of view. I think it would be vital. And also, you know, obviously people coming in by boat to Cove, to be able to come into a platform that they can just come into Cove Town and walk around and go to any venue that they want to is really important. And obviously sailing is a huge part of our maritime history in the harbour, which we absolutely need to mind and embrace. So yeah, I suppose that's where a lot of people would be coming from that respect. Just obviously not to be, we obviously have to close up now quite soon. The last question I'm going to ask here by Hendrik, will a completely new route go from Cove alongside the railway line to be considered from the N25 to Marina Point?
Look, I mean, I suppose when we talk about the Port of Road, right, as the first one, right, that's the first one that we need to crack. How do we improve that road, and how do we the concept of having a second bridge, we say, over the estuary there where the Belvelly Bridge is the first thing. The concept of a second, what you're asking really, I suppose, the concept of a second route running from
possibly
Belvelly down into Cove. I'd say no, to be honest with you, and I'll be frank, if our focus needs to be on from the Cove Cross Junction down to Belvelly Bridge. That in itself, as I say, was going to cost probably in the order of €100 million. Whether we ever develop the concept of another route running alongside the railway down into Cove, that's not in our vision at this particular point in time, anyway.
Okay, and would that not be the cheaper option, or it doesn't work that way, does it?
Cheaper option for which?
Yeah, well, like if you're going to have, would you do one or the other, or like would you consider the Marina Point going along into Marina Point more beneficial than the Photo Road? How would that work?
The Photo Road has to be cracked.
Okay.
The Photo Road is absolutely critical. In fact, even the junction at the Cove Road, the Cove Cross Junction, is under capacity at this point in time as well. And in fact, as part of the Photo Road project, we would be the first piece of infrastructure we would be gearing to try and do would be actually upgrading of that junction to increase the capacity of that junction in the first instance.
Okay, well, look, thank you so much, Tim, for answering all the questions. That I think I got to all the questions. A massive thank you to all the people who attended this morning. It was great to see so many people attending. Thank you to our spotlights, to yourself, Tim, to our sponsors, Port of Cork, to the Chamber Office, and to Lee Gillen Events, who managed all the event and all the tech this morning. Couldn't have done without her, to be honest. Our next breakfast meeting is on the 17th of February, where we will be featuring Seamus Heaney, who is CEO of Visit Cork, and you're all welcome. It's a public event. And again, it's all up on our Chamber website for Eventbrite. So good morning and thank you.
Thank you.